For many people, the story of the Samaritan woman at the well isn't their favorite. The problem isn't with the narrative itself. It is with the way some preachers often mistreat its central character. Long before most are old enough to read John's Gospel for themselves, they know that the woman at the well was sensuous, promiscuous, unchaste, and immoral. In some sermons, she's described quite explicitly as a prostitute, a fallen woman, a harlot. And the grace of the story in this version, good news, resided in nothing more than Jesus' shocking condescension. God even forgives the sins of such a woman. The thing is, nowhere in the narrative is the Samaritan woman described as promiscuous. Nowhere does Jesus call her a sinner, sexual or otherwise, or tell her, as he tells so many others, to go and sin no more. This is not a story about morality. It's not a story about Jesus liberating a woman from her own sex life. It is a story about Jesus revealing himself as the Messiah to a fellow human being in whom he sees genuine spiritual hunger, a learned and engaged mind, and a tremendous gift for preaching, evangelism, and apostleship. So let's begin with what the story actually is. As the theologian Barbara Brown Taylor points out, Jesus' dialogue with the woman at the well is his longest recorded conversation in the New Testament. He talks to the Samaritan woman longer than he talks to his 12 disciples, or to his accusers, or even to his own family members. Moreover, she is the first person, and the first ethnic religious outsider, to whom Jesus reveals his identity in John's Gospel. And, this might be the most compelling fact of all, she is the first believer in any of the Gospels to straightaway become an evangelist and bring her entire city to the saving knowledge of Jesus. As we rethink the story now and allow the richness and nuance of the encounter between Jesus and his would-be follower to wash over us, we can notice grace in different places. In particular, we can find tremendous good news in the way Jesus engages with the woman. Good news we can carry into our own Lenten reflections and practices. Here are some examples of what I mean. Jesus breaks the rules to interact with the world. By the time Jesus meets the woman at the well, the enmity between Jews and Samaritans is ancient, entrenched, and bitter. The two groups disagree about everything that matters: how to honor God, how to interpret the scriptures, and how and where to worship. They practice their faith in separate temples, read different versions of the Torah, and avoid social contact with each other whenever possible. Truth be told, they hate each other's guts. Moreover, the Samaritan is a woman, and it is not customary or appropriate for Jesus, a Jewish man, to converse alone with a Samaritan woman, much less to ask her for a drink of water. That sort of thing is just not done. To put this in more contemporary language, the Samaritan woman is the other, the alien, the heretic, the stranger, the foreigner. She represents all the boundaries that must not be transgressed in religious life, all the spiritual taboos that must not be broken. But Jesus transgresses and breaks them all anyway. Is there anything we can do in our 21st century lives to recover the scandal at the heart of this story? Because its heart is scandal. Not a sexual scandal, but a spiritual one. Think about it this way. Who is the last person on earth you'd ever want to deem good? The last person you'd ask for a favor? Who are the people you secretly wish to convert, fix, impress, control, or save, but never accept as your equals in worth, dignity, or belovedness? Remember, the enmity between the Jews and Samaritans in Jesus' day is not theoretical. It's embodied and real. The differences between them are not easily negotiated. Each is fully convinced that the other is wrong. So what Jesus does when he enters into conversation with a Samaritan woman is radical and risky. It stuns his own disciples because it asks them to dream of a different kind of social and religious order, a a different kind of kingdom. Jesus' willingness to break the social rules of his days means that we, his followers, must live into the truth that people are more than the sum of their political, radical, cultural, and economic identities. Jesus calls us to put aside the stereotypes we carry, the prejudices we nurse, and the social and cultural lines we draw. He invites us to look at the Samaritan woman and see a sister and an apostle, not a harlot, a heretic, a foreigner, or a threat. Where in your life might God be calling you to break a rule, transgress a boundary, embrace a stranger? What lines has Jesus crossed in order to find you? Jesus also leads with vulnerability. As John describes the scene, Jesus is sitting by a well in the desert heat at high noon. He's tired out from his long journey, and he's all by himself. Along comes a woman with a water jar, and the first thing Jesus says to her is, "Give me a drink." I had to sit with this moment in the story for a long while before its irony and strangeness really struck me. Think about it. The Son of God is thirsty at the mouth of a well. And it's the outcast, whom no one else wants to interact with, who provides the water he needs. How long, I wonder, does Jesus sit there with his parched throat and dry lips longing for water? The wilderness at noon is no joke. People die of thirst out there. Do any echoes of his temptation in the wilderness come back to him as he leans over the well and smells the fresh coolness from below? If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. Surely if the Messiah wants to, he can access the well water himself. But no, he waits. He waits so that the woman appears she can recognize the incarnate Messiah in his vulnerability, his humanity, his need. It's a remarkable moment. How often, in contrast, do we Christians plunge into evangelism and ministry with a sense of self-sufficiency, condescension, and toughness, not condensation. How automatically do we hide our needs, our weaknesses, and our vulnerabilities as if what's human, real, and authentic about us must be walled off for the sake of more impressive witness. As if we have everything to offer sinners out there, but nothing to learn or receive from them. Jesus wins the woman's trust by humbling himself, by naming his own thirst, by asking for something she can give. There is no triumphalism in his approach, no smugness, no arrogance. He's thirsty, and he says so, and she responds. Of course, we know that as Jesus' story plays out, he will once again thirst in a lonely place at noon, and once again ask for water. But on that terrible day, he will receive only the mockery of vinegar from the foot of his cross. On this day, by the well, however, Jesus' disarming honesty opens the door for a spiritual seeker to find new life, and then share that new life with her entire city. Jesus sees without shame. The conversation between Jesus and the woman pivots when he tells her what he knows about her life. You are right in saying, "I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true." Of course, this is the sordid revelation commenters often point to when they try to make a case for the woman's sexual wantonness. But as Lutheran minister Nadia Bowles-Weber usefully points out, there are any number of reasons why the Samaritan woman might have had the past she has. Perhaps she was married off as a teen bride and then widowed, and passed along among her dead husband's brothers as per the Levirate marriage practice of the day. Maybe her various husbands abandoned her because she's infertile. Maybe she's a victim of abuse. Maybe she has a disability. Whatever the case, we know for sure that in the first century, women didn't have the legal power to end their own marriage. The authority to file for divorce rested with men alone. So there's a great deal we can't know about the women's history. What we can infer, though, is that she prefers to be invisible. That she goes out of her way to avoid the other women in her town. For whatever reason, she doesn't feel like they like her, accept her, or understand her. So she heads to the well in the scorching heat of the day instead of in the cool of the morning. She hopes to come and go undetected, carrying around in isolation whatever trauma, wound, sin, fear, or desperation her complicated history has left her with. But then Jesus comes along and sees her. He sees the whole of her, the past, the present, the future, who she has been, what she yearns for, how she hurts, all that she might become, and he names it all. But he names it all without shaming, castigating, or condemning her. He sees and names the woman in a way that makes her feel not judged, but loved, not exposed, but shielded, not diminished, but restored. He doesn't shy away from the painful, ugly, broken stuff in her life. Instead, he allows the truth of who she is to come to the surface. Let's name what's real, he tells her. Let's say what is. No more games, no more smoke screens, no more posturing. I see you for who you are, and I love you. Now see who I am, the Messiah. The one in whom you can find freedom, love, healing, and transformation. Spirit and truth, eternal life, living water. Drink of me and live. During this Lenten season, Jesus invites us to see ourselves and each other through the eyes of love, not judgment. Can we, like Jesus, become soft landing places for people who are all alone, carrying stories too heavy to bear? To see brokenness without shaming, it is not easy, but it is what we are called to do. Salvation begins with clear, tender, and unconditional seeing. And Jesus honors the woman's proclamation. When Jesus tells the Samaritan who he is, she leaves her water jar at the well, runs back to her city, and says, "Come and see a man who told me everything I have ever done. He cannot be the Messiah, can he?" There's so much to love about this moment. I love that in her excitement, the woman forgets all about her water jar. I love that her sudden need to share the good news overwhelms her desire to remain anonymous and invisible. I love that her history, once the source of such pain and secrecy, becomes the evidence that she uses to proclaim Jesus' identity. I love that she says, "Come and see," recognizing that Jesus can't be reduced to a secondhand platitude or formula. I love that she shares her experience of Jesus even though her faith is still young, still forming, still in process. He cannot be the Messiah, can he? Even her questions become part of her evangelism. Even her curiosity becomes a tool that arouses the curiosity of others. Most of all, I love that Jesus honors, blesses, and validates the woman's proclamation. John writes that Jesus stays in the woman's city for 2 days so that everyone who hears her testimony can meet with him directly and see that the woman is a reliable witness. She, like John the Baptist, like the apostles, like Mary Magdalene, like Paul, prepares the way of the Lord, and Jesus encourages her to do so. Many Samaritans from that city, the gospel writer tells us, believed in him because of the woman's testimony. So who is speaking the good news into your life? How are you receiving their testimony? In the most unlikely places, through the most unexpected voices, from the minds and bodies of the disempowered and the overlooked, the word of God speaks, and the living water flows. During this Lenten season, may we have ears to hear it, hearts to drink it in, and humility to honor and bless its proclamation. Amen. I am flying solo today because, believe it or not, it's Girl Scout Sunday. And Alex and Sarah and Caroline are doing a cookie booth, and Floyd and Pat went to their grandparents. So we're kind of all over the place today. Speaking of Girl Scouts and cookie season, technically today is the end of cookie season. However, we have so many cookies. If you want some, just let me know. So many cookies. Announcements. I'm really failing at this because they're always on the other page. I always look at one page and then I go with the other. Okay. Lenten soup and suppers. Those are still happening. We've got what? 3 more? 2 more. Nobody knows. There's a sign up at the parish hall. Make sure you check that out. We have 2 announcements or questions for the congregation. First, Sharon.
We have traditionally had an Easter breakfast. Do we want to continue with that tradition, or do we want to move to brunch?
In other words, what we're asking is 8 to 10 in the morning or after service until we're done. Any thoughts? Let's start there.
After.
We have 1 for after.
I second the after. Easier for us.
I think we always did before because a lot of people have family obligations afterwards. And I think that's why it became an early breakfast, or that's why we're seeing it.
Okay. After for you. All right, so it seems like a general consensus would be after. So we'll move that to after. The second question that we have is also in relation to services. So Holy Week is coming up. Typically, what the Episcopal Church does is the Holy Triduum, which is the 3 services. It's Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, and then the Easter Vigil, which this church hasn't done in the past, and I'm not going to institute this year. So we'll do a Sunday morning kind of Easter Vigil-y Sunday morning service for Easter. The question that I have, though, is for Good Friday. Typically, I'm all for Good Friday services in individual parishes, not a problem. This year, though, Lawrence County Ministerial Alliance is doing a community Good Friday service at the Methodist Church at 7 p.m. We would be having ours at 6 p.m. I typically am of the mindset that, especially if you're a small parish, you want to do as much as you possibly can with other churches in the area to make sure that you build up connections and resources to help spread the gospel and be as good of a presence as you can be in the community. That being said, I don't have a problem doing our own Good Friday service either. So I'm just kind of wondering where you guys are at. I will say this. Good Friday is not a service that we necessarily do anything individualistic outside of what somebody might do at another Good Friday service. Versus like the Monday, Thursday service, we'll strip the altar and we'll do foot washing. That typically isn't found in a lot of other services. There are some other services. Yeah. That was a lot. Any thoughts? We're such a lively bunch this morning.
We did services together with 4 downtown churches before. I actually really liked it.
Okay.
We sort of traded off between 4, like doing services.
So this is more than just the 4. This
Right.
is all of the churches in Lawrence County. So just a heads up. Okay, we'll do a show of hands. Service at St. John's. Service at the Ministerial Association. Okay, we're gonna join with the community at 7 p.m. then, so we'll need that changed. It will be at the Methodist Church, and I will get some more information and see if there might be something that we can volunteer or do to help out with that service. Awesome. Any other announcements?
We have Bedford this Wednesday.
Bedford this Wednesday. Bedford at 6:30 on Wednesday. Any other announcements? Birthdays and anniversaries. Okay. That was a lot. Sorry for that. I do feel like since the gospel, I've been talking a whole lot. And it's just going to get worse. So, sorry about that. I beseech you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present yourselves as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship.